Hello everybody and welcome to my YouTube channel Ruben Jr. Today I'm going to talk about the nuclear disaster in Chernobyl, which was one of the worst nuclear disasters in history. The Chernobyl disaster took place in the former Soviet Ukraine, or the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, on April 26, 1986, a year after Gorbachev took over as the leader of the Soviet Union and following the death of Konstantin Chernenko. So Gorbachev took power a year before the Chernobyl disaster happened. So on April 26, 1986, a nuclear power plant in Chernobyl blew up because some scientists were running some tests in the former Soviet Ukraine, and the power plant. They were running some tests with the nuclear reactors, and somehow the nuclear reactor was unstable, and then it caught on, and then it exploded, and the whole building of Chernobyl explode, and the whole nuclear power plant in Chernobyl blew up during that time. So following this, there was a huge explosion in the city of Chernobyl. My family was in the former Soviet Armenia, or the Armenian Soviet Socialist Republic, when the Chernobyl disaster took place in 1986. So following the explosion in Chernobyl, there was this radiation. It was going on through the city, going throughout the city of Chernobyl, and radiation started spreading out of the Soviet Ukraine. And following that, the radiation started spreading to Sweden and the Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic, and to Poland, I believe. And there was radiation spreading through those countries. And people started getting sick following the explosion in Chernobyl. So following that, Soviet Union announced to the people of the entire country, all 15 republics, that okay, so we had a disaster in Chernobyl, and we'll tell you what's going on later. So people were kind of nervous about what happened in Chernobyl, and there was no power going on. There was no power in the city, from what I remember reading of the Chernobyl disaster. So there was also this thing. It was called the Russian Woodpecker. It would detect any radiation, any nuclear missiles flying to the Soviet Union, to the United States. So then United States found out about the Chernobyl disaster in the Soviet Ukraine, because Soviet Union didn't tell the United States about the disaster in Chernobyl. Because they kept it a secret. They didn't want the United States to know about what happened in Chernobyl. But United States found out about it, what happened in Chernobyl. So after the nuclear power plant in Chernobyl blew up, there was, after the nuclear power plant exploded in Chernobyl, all the fish in the water were killed by the radiation, because radiation was so poisonous. For example, like the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II. So when we dropped those two bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it caused radiation throughout the city, and people started getting sick, and they started dying because of the radiation in those two cities, in the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So even in the Chernobyl disaster, people started getting sick, and they started getting cancer because of the radiation was spreading throughout the city. So yeah, that's what happened in the Chernobyl disaster in the former Soviet Ukraine. And there were some reports in the Soviet Union that when the radiation hit, everyone would turn into zombies in the former Soviet Union during that time. So that's what happened in Chernobyl. And even today, there's still radiation throughout the city in Ukraine. If people want to go visit the city in Chernobyl, they would have to go visit the city with masks around their heads, gas masks, so they won't have to catch the radiation and get sick. If they wanted to go see the city, if they wanted to go see Chernobyl themselves. So, yeah, it's radioactive to this very day. It's still very radioactive in the city of Chernobyl. So yeah, that's what happened, and you can't go there because the radiation's still there. It's gonna remain there for almost 100 years, because it happened in 1986 when my father was 31, and my grandma was 30 when the Chernobyl disaster happened, and my mom and aunt my mom was 3 years old when Chernobyl disaster happened, and my aunt was 4 years old when Chernobyl disaster happened during that time. So yeah, that's what happened. And then years later, another nuclear disaster would take place in Japan, the Fukushima nuclear disaster. That happened in 2011. And the Chernobyl disaster was one of the worst nuclear disasters in history, because it killed over 30, I believe it was 31 people were killed by the radiation poisoning in the Chernobyl. So my father was in Armenia during the Chernobyl disaster in the former Soviet Union. He was in the Soviet Armenia, or the Armenian Soviet Socialist Republic, with my grandma and my mom and aunt. They were in Chernobyl when that happened. And so this took place a year after Gorbachev took power as General Secretary of Communist Party of Soviet Union. So that's what happened during the Chernobyl disaster in Ukraine. So yep, that's what happened in the Chernobyl. So in my next video, I'm going to talk about what did Soviet schools teach my father and my other ancestors while they were in that country. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.